Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We are talking about AI and machine learning. We're going to start talking about priorities and teeing those up. And Paul, let me start with you. Top priority for you all this year?
There really are two priorities for us this year that we're focused on. One is helping our customers with the challenge of adoption. And Tim mentioned earlier some of the concerns around is AI, going to replace the existing workforce? And what I think we have to really help our customers understand is the augmentation aspect of what we're really trying to do, and that it's really trying to empower the humans to do what they do best, those cognitive decision-making aspects of their life, as opposed to the remedial tasks. And so to the extent, whether that's gathering data, processing transactions, we really want to help them understand the augmentation aspect of it. And that kind of fits into part two, which is there's been a recent study that says 65% of the federal workforce is burned out, and another 49% are contemplating leaving government. And that is truly some staggering statistics. And I think you can take the technologies that are being discussed today and even take that augmentation to the next level to make it so that people are more effective in their jobs. They can address that burnout challenges that they have. And then hopefully effectively doing that, it'll address some of that attrition risk that's underlying the industry today. So I really think those two things hand in hand with the way that we go to market, focused on domain expertise and as a service, will really help our customers in their journey.
Love the idea of lowering the burnout factor. Super important. A lot of federal employees out there really working really hard, and their partners, quite frankly. Syed, top priority for Fortinet Federal this year?
Yes. So Fortinet Federal and Fortinet as a whole, we're constantly trying to make sure that security is front and center of all organizations. We cannot continue on. Basically, we have to operate with the mindset that there is a breach and, the bad guys are already inside, right? So if we have that mindset, then I think we can prioritize cybersecurity without too much difficulty. So what we're doing is you need to understand and leverage machine learning, artificial intelligence based on, artificial neural networks, deep learning networks, right? So you have to understand that you have a lot of data points, millions of data points, right? You have to feed your engine, your AI engine, with all these, data points, and then try to figure out what are your actionable items. So what we've done is we've taken this approach and we're trying to go out to our customers and make them understand, as Paul mentioned, that, hey, we're not trying to take jobs away, but we're trying to bring in AI to help you get to the verdict, get to detect and respond. Just imagine, you have 5 analysts sitting there trying to figure out what to do with these 100,000 files. What we have a solution that can detect and provide you a verdict of 100,000 files per hour. There is nothing out there that can help you do that. So with this in mind, our priority is basically very, very straightforward. Leverage the technologies that are available to you, understand how they help you, and protect your assets and protect the nation. And
do it instantaneously. I love it. Tim, top priority for you at the GAO?
Yeah, thanks. So, the top priority, there's a couple I'll mention, but the top one for sure really builds on what Paul was saying. I like how he laid out the issues. There's burnout and so on, because we feds have problems, right? And we're trying to do our job and be a greater and better federal workforce.
Got a ton of responsibility.
And honestly, it was weird during the early days of the pandemic and working at home. I was mostly sitting around during the day and things like that, but I was mentally exhausted in a way that I hadn't expected, by the end of the day, and certainly in the pre-2019 work factor. So the top priority really is, the problem with AI, in my opinion, the number one problem is that we keep talking about AI. And here's what I mean by that is we need to like shift the conversation from AI, which is just a technology or a means by which to do something, and talk about what problems do we need to solve. Because we can have, we're here at GAO, we're both at the same time a techno optimist and techno skeptic, right? So we have to deal in truth and reality and so on. And so we've built our AI accountability framework, right? We understand how to even look at this because we're going to have to evaluate this across every federal program. But all this means is that, Luke, our number one priority is really culture building on this. And it starts with trying to understand what are the problems, right? Why do we have burned out feds? And are there things in their workspace that frankly need to be done by a machine? It's going to be more accurate. It's going to be faster. It's going to allow them to be greater and better versions of themselves. It really is a human capital enhancement type approach, not a human capital drain or dislocation. So really, as hard as the tech and the data and the engineering behind that, all this is a challenge. And you need to be, again, have healthy skepticism about this. It's never going to be an easy button that you push and AI is just going to magically solve everything in and of itself. Nevertheless, we need to be able to think about AI in terms of solving our problems as one of our tools, using data-driven approaches, supporting those quicker, better decision sciences. And I think that's the kind of thing that we're focused on in our priorities. So.
Second, allow these finite resources to really focus up the value chain. I think it's fantastic and a nice way to reframe the thinking, if you will, there. Yeah, Jeffrey, top priority for H2O AI.
Well, I think from our perspective is we really want to help, and I'll sort of tag on Tim's point, is we want to help the federal government solve these really large problems that aren't just in one niche area, but really go across the entire enterprise of government, right? And to use AI where it makes sense and to help move really from experimentation into production, right? We're seeing lots and lots and lots of activities. People are all sort of kicking the tires and they've got different use cases, but now how do you take it out of that experimentation phase and begin to scale it and do it rapidly? And this is an area where we're the absolute leader in the world when it comes to that, moving from experimentation into production. I can say probably in our commercial practice, they're moving, new data models and business cases into production in about 2 weeks. Well, and around government, it might be 9 months, it might be a year. And so even if you can collapse that a little bit more, you're now able to really help solve these problems and do it quickly. And coming out of the regulated industries, as you mentioned earlier, Luke, having everything auditable, right? There's Tim's office has done a ton of great work around responsible AI and explainable AI, right? If a person who's non-technical, if it's someone in Congress, if they don't understand why decisions are being made, right, they need to make sure a protected class hasn't been affected or there's some bias in the model that they weren't aware of. Those types of things need to be immediately apparent. They need to be documented. They need to be audited. You have to be able to repeat these experiments and so forth. These are things that we do every day in our practice that we're now beginning to bring over. So a use case, Luke, documents, the number of faxes that are processed across the federal government and are still reviewed by humans. It's part of that workflow, understanding. In medical areas, for example, in the VA and HHS, these are very technical documents. You can't have a non-qualified person really review them and advance them. And so there are capabilities that allow you to do that. I think another one is policy announcements. Any agency, you've got anytime a new policy may be announced, it's open for public comment. Well, amazingly, a lot of that work and the review is done by humans, right? This goes to that burnout issue that you and Tim both talked about. Well, if there's a way where we can allow machines to do a lot of this pick and shovel work and review, and you have a human in the loop, you have that cognitive component verifying it, Now you're able to say, hey, we don't need to leave this policy open for 9 months, not because it needs to be open for 9 months, but because it's taking us 9 months to review 20,000 comments and encapsulate those. So for us, I think it's just helping our mission partners and agency partners across government begin to understand what the art of the possible is, getting out of experimentation, moving into production, and they don't have to leave explainability or documentation or repeatability or that audit. That all comes with the deal. That's table stakes these days. And if your technology partner isn't able to show you that almost instantly, they probably aren't able to do it. It's black boxed, and that gets everybody in trouble.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to wrap it up. We always like to ask this last question. Saeed, I'm going to start with you. Just talk about what it's going to look like in a couple of years.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I get this question quite a bit, actually. 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years from now, or maybe a decade later, or 20 years.
We like to stick with 2. We don't like to get out there to 5 to 10 into Buck Rogers land.
Perfect. So what we're looking at is an environment where basically we're calling, our terminology for that is a Fortinet security fabric. What that is basically an architecture where you have all these disparate systems, integrated tightly together, so that if a threat is learned at any point, at any node, at any endpoint, be it in the cloud, at your remote office, and especially nowadays because the environment is work from anywhere. So you're getting threats from all across, right? Your threat surface has expanded, as I mentioned earlier. So we're looking at this Fortinet security fabric where we learn of something that we have not known before. Leveraging AI and machine learning, we're going to identify that as an artifact of interest. Maybe it's suspicious, maybe it's malicious. But once we have determined that in sub-second speed, meaning usually we do that under 100 milliseconds, then we're able to then take that information and spread it across the entire fabric, the architecture that allows you to integrate all these disparate systems. When you do that, then you're able to, with near perfect, verdict, you're then able to protect your environment, your architecture. And again, it's not just being able to do it on-prem or in the cloud. It's everything hybrid. And it doesn't matter where your technology is deployed, you should be able to perform this. And having this visibility and being able to manage it centrally, that is going to be our future.
At machine speed. I love it. Paul, 2 years from now, what's it going to look like?
Yeah, so great question. I really think there's a few things that have to happen across the industry to
maybe give us 1 or 2. Well, we're trying to get it all in.
Yep, sure. One is reciprocity, right? So I think everybody's talking about great solutions. One of the biggest challenges we all face around adoption is reciprocity of the ATOs. We have ATOs in civilian, DoD, healthcare agencies, but getting these technologies deployed, we have a robust ethics and AI framework that's been adopted and signed off by our board. We're doing all the right things, I believe, from getting the bias out of the algorithms and everything else. We have really cutting edge advanced technologies, and we have some very basic things that just help people get their jobs done. But without that reciprocity and without some way to accelerate the security issues and being able to deploy, it's going to continue to be a challenge for industry.
Very laser focused. We love the idea of reciprocity on ATOs. We love the idea of reciprocity on clearances as well. So please take a look at that one. Jeffrey, H2O.ai, 2 years from now, you're firmly entrenched in the public sector. What can we expect to see at that point in time?
Well, I think the future is here already, Luke. And the big challenge is we sell AI every day, but most entities inside of government have never purchased AI at scale. And what
certainly not as a service.
Yeah, certainly not as a service, which I love, by the way, Paul. We're right in lockstep with you there. And so I think part of it is making, 2 years from now, we've got the right people in the room from an acquisition and a requirements perspective. They understand the mission. there's an understanding of the technology and the capabilities, and that it's not peanut butter, that it's brushed across everything, but it's focused in the areas that move the needle, make the most sense, that can be measured, right? You need an ROI on things, and so that you can begin to look at AI in the same way you do any other program metric and KPI and things like that. So from our perspective, upskilling folks in the program management offices, helping them understand what does proper due diligence look like when you're going to buy an AI capability, right? We see there's still a fair amount of buyer's remorse, things that are generalized capabilities, but may not necessarily really apply to the specific mission need. And so I think that training and education, understanding the requirements, the procurement, and the due diligence around AI is, you have to make sure that you've got people that understand the real problem set in the room. And so it's very interesting. I think we're in a similar phase where cyber was 8 or 10 years ago. Lots of really smart people using some really interesting capabilities to solve problems, and now moving into the automation phase and helping them really do that at scale.
No question about it. Really looking forward to that. Certainly the future is definitely now. And we look forward to that as well. Tim, 2 to 3 years from now, you all have fully adopted AI, and perhaps the members of lawmakers have a very good understanding and awareness of this. What can we expect to see, maybe from whether it's a regulatory standpoint or the use of AI at the GAO?
On the client side, from our perspective, I think you're going to see a sharpening around AI. There's already been, for example, led by Senator Wyden, there was a Algorithmic Accountability Act, which has a lot of good content in there about just trying to run AI responsibly, which has been mentioned. So I think you're going to see legislation or activities or hearings, I think, that go around that. How do we achieve the mission or solve the problems with AI, but do it in a responsible way? And for us, that means use sort of formed by our accountability framework for AI, which not only applies to federal government, we would say it just applies to any use of AI anywhere you want to do that. So I think we'll see increasing interest in use in that way. Within GAO, what we are doing is we have the Innovation Lab, as was mentioned before. Hired Taka Riga as our chief data scientist, and we're moving really from a small startup phase into a more scaled operation. And so for us, it's going to be a lot of prototypes that are coming out, like the one I mentioned before, and then a productionalization process that puts it in and scales it across the enterprise. The idea being we are solving some key challenges with, be it federal burnout or just, if we're doing mind-numbing things that the human value can be expressed in other labor categories or higher functions. And that's what I think you're going to be seeing. So we'll keep moving on in our mission of de-risking, ideating, prototyping, and de-risking those things in our sandbox environment of the lab, so that our mission set doesn't have to take that risk. But we work in parallel, are highly informed by their problems. I think we'll see a lot of partnership, and optimistically, I think there's going to be a great awakening across our building about, wow, this is going to be, there's a bright future with this if we get this right, as well as what our evaluators do across the federal programs. They're going to be able to use our framework and become better evaluators as AI proliferates in the federal sector.
We're certainly looking forward to that. General Olson, would like to talk to you about what does it look like, 2 to 3 years from now? Are we going to have autonomous strike fighters out there running on AI, or what's that going to look like in 3 years from now?
Well, certainly the rate and pace of the application of both data analytics and AI, ML, and deep learning capabilities are a pervasive focus across the Department of the Air Force. as we look ahead and do a snapshot, I think the quintessential application that includes a portfolio-wide approach is both the focused utilization across our Secretary of the Air Force operational imperatives, but it's also what we call JADC2, or Joint All-Domain Command and Control, and the specific application within the Department of the Air Force is the Advanced Battle Management System, or ABMS. As you can tell, I have a couple of hats. So I am, in addition to the Department of the Air Force Chief Data and AI Officer, I'm the mobilization assistant to the Chief of Space Operations, thus the image in the background, but I'm also the Space Force lead for JADC2 and ABMS. And so when we look at the convergence of these areas, when we look at the underpinnings of the digital infrastructure, essentially JADC2 is the ability to sense, make sense, and act across all domains with the joint services in a contested environment at the speed of relevance. And I think that absolutely underscores the quintessential approach. We're trying to leverage machine-to-machine speed. We're trying to leverage the predictive and other capabilities of AI ML readiness. And we're trying to, again, sense, make sense, and act at that high speed, very dynamic cadence that's required. So for the Space Force, that's absolutely leveraging decision advantage and information advantage by being able to leverage the information and apply that through knowledge and action at the speed of need. In the Air Force, as we look at and talk about wingman AI and collaborative combat aircraft, that's absolutely essential to what we're doing. But of course, we don't even fly without maintenance and logistics and basing. And these are really complex and challenging endeavors. And we're leveraging data and access to our authoritative data and analytics at speed with AI, ML, and DL capabilities. So these are really ubiquitous enablers. Is this Buck Rogers? Is this Star Wars? It is on the path to leveraging the tremendous capability, but it's really evolutionary, and yet I don't want to understate the rate and pace of advancement. And as we talk with our industry partners and our interagency partners here, it's absolutely essential to work collaboratively. And we think that this is a team sport and driving to deliver those outcomes at a very rapid pace, making sure that we're responsible, we're robust, and we're resilient all throughout the journey is an integral part. So I'm really enthused about the future. I think what we're seeing is year by year, actually month by month, we're making extraordinary progress. We've got a lot to do, and we're laser focused on that.
It really does seem like a sort of a hockey stick sort of acceleration of the adoption of this technology. So we really do appreciate that. And we certainly do want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for this program. And I'd like to thank the sponsors for supporting us on this show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make the program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank the listening audience out there that tune in every month. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum, part of the Federal News Network.